And we are live. This is AA Beyond Belief, the podcast, and this is our Friday live stream. My name is John, and I am your host. Oh my goodness. Oh, thank you. Thank you, please. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Yes. Thank you. And I am here with Angela. Angela, say hello to the crowd. Angela! Oh, they love you.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
I was not expecting that.
There you
So
go.
yeah, anybody wondering why I'm
So that's
having an issue here? He didn't tell me he
if you
was
guys
going to
found
do
that
that.
annoying. I had to do something a little bit different to shake things up because I read a really nauseating thing today called Chapter 1 of the General Service Manual. It was like this. I think that this is going to be one of those episodes. Like if you ever have problems sleeping at night, listen to this episode. It will put you to sleep. We'll see.
Yeah,
Maybe it won't.
yeah,
We'll
yeah,
see.
yeah.
So, yeah. So, Angela, you read that chapter, Introduction to General Service?
I did. I actually a couple of years ago, after the secular conference in Toronto, I got a service sponsor because I learned that that's a thing, and and since I was being in service at that time, I thought I should get one, so I got one, and the service sponsor I got was our area delegate at the time, and so she had several people that wanted to work with her, and she formed a little study group. So we all got our service manuals, and then printed out this like workbook type thing that had a bunch of questions in it, and it was basically we get together once a month and go over the answers to the suggested reading and questions from the thing. Yeah. When you mentioned this being a topic, I thought about going and getting my little book, but it's at the other house, so
wow.
I don't
So you
remember
really did
anything
get
about
into
it.
I don't know if I ever.
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever read it. I mean, I probably did, or at least this. I don't know. I think I just kind of browsed through the service manual and thought this is interesting, whatever. But I never really sat down to read it. But I did read this, and I also read the history beforehand of how it all started that Bill W. wrote. So I don't know. How should we begin? Maybe we'll try this. Tell me how this might work, Angela. What if I kind of go through a little bit of the history that Bill wrote that leads to the creation of the General Service Conference, and then we can talk about, maybe our own personal experience working in General Service, and then I maybe go through the chapter a little bit and talk about some of the key points and open it up for calls.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. So I'll do my best here. And for those of you out there listening on YouTube and Facebook, please call in at 844-899-8278 because I might not know what I'm talking about, and you might be able to catch me in an error or set me straight, or at least share your experience with this topic service. So the manual begins with Bill W. writing about the history that led up to the development of the General Service Conference of AA. And it says that it was an outgrowth of the Third Legacy Manual, which served the movement of AA, and it was Bill W.'s first draft, and it served the purpose up until 1951. And all of the basic principles and procedures that are outlined in that document that Bill wrote at that time were incorporated into the service manual that we have today. Joe is asking us to limit the calls to 2 minutes tops. We might do that, Joe. We should get like a timer or something. But anyway, so that's what happened with that. It was an outgrowth of a manual that Bill W. had written some time ago. And in that manual, it says that AA is a society of alcoholics in action, and that service in Alcoholics Anonymous is defined as almost anything you do to help another alcoholic. And that could be, buying them a cup of coffee, or being their sponsor, or working the phones at central office,
or showing up at a meeting,
all kinds of service. And then it can also be, getting involved with your district, or becoming a delegate that goes to the General Service Conference. It could be the literature that AA produces and sends out to people, and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of lays out what service actually is. And then he goes into this history to explain why it was important to have some sort of an official, protocol, I guess, of getting the service out, and having a setup, I guess. So he wrote that services that we provide are vital to AA's existence and growth, but that we should always stop and ask us if a service is really needed. And if it is, great. But if it's not, we should stop doing it. I thought that was a pretty good point. But anyway, the vital services that they have come up with in this service manual is the General Service Office, AA World Services, the AA Grapevine, and the General Service Board, which is the Board of Trustees. And prior to 1950, all of that was done by the founders, Bill and Bob, and probably mostly by Bill. But he also says there were some old timers that, that some of the original members, I guess, of AA that were also involved. And so they were kind of running things based upon their own experience and doing what they wanted to do. And but at around that time, the founders realized that they weren't going to live forever. In fact, I think Bob died in the 1950s. They weren't going to live forever, and they needed to have some sort of a structure in place so that the fellowship can live without them and operate without them. So that they needed to have some sort of a conference where the fellowship would take responsibility for itself. And so the whole idea is that they had already a board set up that they call, I think, the Alcoholic Foundation was their board. But they knew that after Bill and Bob were gone and all the original members were gone, that they still needed to have this board, but it needed to be connected with the fellowship. And that's why they created this conference that would meet on an annual basis with the trustees, with that board. And then that makes the fellowship of AA responsible for being, the guardians or the stewards of Alcoholics Anonymous. But otherwise, if they didn't do that, the board would be making decisions without any input from people in AA. So now we have a General Service Conference, and there are 93 delegates that go to the conference once a year. They are from U.S. and Canada and North America. And so they're broken up in areas, and some of those are by states or province, and some of them are from, portions of a state, things like that. And the General Service Conference made up of those delegates, the Board of Trustees, the directors of AA World Services, and we'll talk about that, the Grapevine, and the General Service Office. And the first time that the conference met was in 1951, and it meets every year either in April or May in New York. But now I think they had the first one because of COVID. They had to do it by Zoom. So then he goes into this history. I'm not sure why he did all of this, but he talked about some of the early money problems that AA had. And when I was reading through it, it was kind of interesting that, they were really relying on that big book to finance the fellowship. And it really didn't do very well in the beginning. They just weren't selling a whole lot of copies of it. At one point, they were thinking about having Harper's be the publisher, but they decided that it would be better for them to have control over it. So what they did, they created this company called Works Publishing, I think it was called. And hey, Joe. There he is. Anyway, so Joe, tell me if I ever make a mistake. Just type something in there. You just said wrong. Anyway, so they created this thing called Works Publishing, and they sold shares, and they were $25 a share. And you know what? That's not cheap in 1939. That $25 is a lot of money. But anyway, so they sold shares of the book, but they still weren't selling very much. The New York Times gave it a nice little review, but still not a whole lot going on. But then all of a sudden they started getting some publicity. In 1939, Liberty Magazine did an article. It was written by Morris Markey called Alcoholics and God. And that generated some 800 letters to the General Service Office. I don't know what they called themselves at that time, but to the headquarters, I guess, that they set up in New York. And the book started selling. They started selling some books. And then another article came out by the Cleveland Plain Dealer. And I tell you, that city of Cleveland had a lot to do with the AA that we are today. But in the Cleveland Plain Dealer put out some sort of an article, and I've never really read it. But after that article came out, more groups started developing in Cleveland, and I guess outside of Cleveland. So that happened. And then also the Rockefeller dinner, which we all know about, where, they wanted money to get this thing going. So they went to the Rockefellers. He was like the richest person in the world, I guess. And they had this dinner, and Rockefeller only gave them $1,000, which doesn't sound like a lot. But I looked it up, and $1,000 in 1939 is $18,000 in today's money. So that's not so bad. And they used that to finance Bob and Bill's life, basically, for a year and a half, I guess. It helped. They each got like $30 a week, which in today's money is like $560 a week. So that I did the math. That would last like about a year and a half, I guess, to pay their expenses. So, yeah, are you falling asleep yet? So anyway, so then we go into the 1940s, and the book is selling better, and the membership is increasing, and the office in New York is getting more inquiries from people asking about AA and how to start meetings, and groups also would call because they had problems, different kinds of weird problems. You could read about those in some of the history books and so forth. So they and they would have these traveling salespeople that would start groups and help people out, help groups with the problems they would have. But the problem is those salespeople, couldn't always hang out all the time with those groups. So that's why the group started relying on the office in New York. So anyway, I guess what they're trying to get at is, because of the growth of the fellowship, there was a need for some sort of a central service office for the entire fellowship. And so that's why they needed to do this. And I was talking about the stockholders on Works Publishing. I was reading about that, and this is kind of interesting. I didn't really know this, but the stockholders, the people who originally bought the shares, they were getting upset because they weren't getting their money. They weren't getting anything. They weren't getting anything out of it. All the money was going into financing the services, right? So anyway, so what happened is Hank P. and Bill, they donated all of their shares to the Alcoholic Foundation. Okay. And then they borrowed money from the Rockefeller Foundation. They borrowed $8,000. And I don't know what this has to do with general service, but it's kind of interesting. They borrowed $8,000. $8,000, if I did it right, is $150,000 in today's money. That is a lot of money. But they started selling massive amounts of big books, and they were able to pay that debt off, and they were able to buy back all the stock from all the stockholders. And you kind of wonder about that. I mean, maybe it would have been better for those people if they could have kept hang on to that, because that book ended up going on to sell millions of copies. But anyway, I'm not going to go into any further with that. But he just kind of laid out, I guess, the rationale for why we needed to have, how general service came about, and why we needed to have a organization to make sure that it facilitates that service. So, Angela, what do you think? Do you have any commentary on that?
No, that's pretty much what that beginning part says about service and how it came together and stuff. But yeah, the AA service manual is not something that you sit down to read, to enjoy. You don't take it on vacation with you and stuff. And so I think that's why my service sponsor used the method that she did of, little bits and pieces at a time, and combining it with the traditions, and to help us understand it a little bit better. But I didn't get through the whole thing because of COVID. We were partially through our thing, and then it just kind of fizzled after that. So yeah, what's been your experience doing service? I mean, I the farthest I've gotten is I've been a GSR for my home group, so I've attended a couple of annual conferences, and I attended PRASA once, which is the Pacific Region Service Assembly, or AA Assembly Service, something like that. Anyway, yeah. and that was interesting. A lot of service geeks there, and so so I was entertained just watching people going around, being of service to each other and out servicing each other, and all of that kind of stuff. So I
Yeah.
mean, it's cool because they all want to be there and want to be doing something for other people and helping and stuff. So they have a passion for it, but it
Yeah.
can get pretty funny sometimes. So
It can. And
yeah.
even in the manual, they talk about it. They write about it a little bit about how it's important that, like when they talked about the spirit of rotation, that it's important for
Right.
people not to get their egos all tied up into whatever their position is, and just be able to
Yeah.
pass it on. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I can tell you my background with this is, and this is the truth, I have failed at every single service position I've ever had. I guess the only exception of that would be when I was the GSR for our group. But basically, what happened was, so I've been in AA for a long time, and I really didn't get involved. I really wasn't interested in anything outside my group. I did go to an area assembly like when I was a few years sober, I think, and I went to some district meetings, but I didn't really understand what was going on and really wasn't interested in it. But then, after many decades later, and I'm beginning to learn about these agnostic AA groups, and I'm listening to Joe C's podcast, and I'm thinking about AA in a different way. And I'm almost becoming sort of a revolutionary. I'm thinking in my brain, I'm thinking I want to go out there and just change everything, and set everybody straight and so forth. So anyway, so we started this group, and I wanted to make sure that our group, we agnostics, was always involved in general service. So I was the first GSR, and I started going to district meetings. And I thought that when I went to district, that the first I was going to be, fighting with people. I thought they weren't going to like me. I'm nasty atheist and all that, but no, they loved me, and they were happy to have me there. And I started making friends, and I really felt like I enjoyed going to the district meetings, and I enjoyed going to the area assemblies, and not so much because of the work that we did there and all the stuff, but I just liked being around all the different people, and I liked meeting people from different parts of the state, at least the western half of the state, and from different groups. And anyway, it was just kind of a lot of fun. But I also learned how the the way that the whole structure works, and how I guess the thing that I was really impressed about is I started asking for stuff at the conference, and some of it was kind of crazy. Like when the groups in Toronto were having that lawsuit, I got on the floor of our area assembly, and I was demanding that the area support the groups in Toronto with their lawsuit or whatever. And people thought I was crazy, but anyway, it was really nice because they listened to me, and the few people, I think there might have been one other person who agreed with me, and they let us have minority opinion and stuff. So I don't know, it was kind of nice,
Wow.
yeah. And people, yeah, they were tolerant of me and my silly stuff. But later on, we actually did get something done, our group. After I did rotate off, and then Julie became our next GSR. And okay, so I'd already been working with our delegate before Julie came on. We were working with him about that book. He was our delegate was the chair of the literature committee at the General Service Conference that approved the AA Grapevine book for atheists and agnostics, right? So we were on him and talking about him. Hey, help us do this. Help us do this. Can you make sure that this book passes? And he worked with us, and he was very helpful, and he was behind it and everything like that. And I just felt like a connection to the General Service Conference through him. And so anyway, so Julie came on after I left, and the Godward pamphlet was being talked about, right? And Glenn's group in Jacksonville actually had their area assembly vote for that pamphlet, and their vote was that they wanted the General Service Conference to adopt the Godward pamphlet from the United Kingdom.
Right.
And what we did, we went to our delegate that helped us out with the One Big Tent book. You're right, Joe. And we asked him if he would, how to do this. And we thought that we were going to also go to our area. And he says, no, what you should do is you need to send an email to the literature committee, the trustees literature committee in New York, and tell them what you want to do. So that's what we did. Julie sent them an email, and they wrote back a response that I wish I would have saved. I know I had that email saved somewhere, but they wrote back a response that said that they were going to, on behalf of We Agnostics Kansas City, they were going to recommend that the Godward pamphlet be adopted. And so, in all the material that the delegates got at that General Service Conference, our group was mentioned in all the materials that the delegates got, and I was kind of proud of that. So we actually did get that done. Now, a lot of people don't like the Godward pamphlet, but you know what? That's why you want to get involved in General Service, because you can change things. People will listen to you, and you can make your case that, you know what? I think there's a really good case made that we can change some of the stories in the Godward pamphlet, because they're all from the United Kingdom, and maybe it'd be nice to have some Canadian and American stories in there, you know.
Right.
So I'm talking too much, but anyway, that was my experience with that. But I've done some other things that I have failed at, every single one since then. So there you go.
Like what?
Well, my biggest failure was as the treasurer for our district, and it wasn't because
you were the one that took all the money.
No, I didn't steal any money or anything, but
Oh, come on. Then you weren't a failure. I mean, that's the main thing for being treasurer, that you fail at in AA is when you take all the money.
Well, they were horrible because, okay, first of all, I didn't have really access to the bank account. So it was really hard for me to give them reports about the money. And then they always insisted that I make deposits on very specific dates. And I had to go all the way down to this other part of town to get the checks and stuff. And at the time I was working on another area of town, which is a real pain in the ass to go get those checks, make sure I got deposit before the month ended and all that kind of stuff. And I would always fail at that. And they'd always bitch at me because I wasn't getting the deposits on time. And I'm like, what does it matter? The money is going into the bank. Why does it really matter? Anyway, it mattered to them. And eventually I went on a cruise with my wife, and they were talking about getting rid of me while I was on the cruise. And then I think I resigned is what I did. And I've never been back to a district meeting since then.
Yeah.
and now I'm the chair of the archives committee for the area. And then COVID came along, and now we do it all online. So anyway, so I don't know. I think I've come to the conclusion that maybe it's not for me. But I do think it's important, and that people at least give it a try. Because
I think there's a lot of good things about it. What I've noticed in my time in the rooms, people who, anybody can be involved, and so it's not always the people who are already successful in life, and then got some help and became even more successful. Anybody could be involved, and so I think that's kind of a cool thing because some people have never had any real responsibility in areas involving groups and stuff. So it gives them the experience of working with others. So I think it's helpful for a lot of us in our employment and stuff. I've shared many a times that I am not a great employee. And so, I noticed, you have to work together with people in these committees to get some things done. And that, it is kind of cool that they really do have to listen to minority opinion, or it's in the structure that they have to. It can be really annoying sometimes when it's like, 6 hours of, talking about something and minority opinion and all of that. But I still think it's an interesting process, and something that is important for us to learn from, particularly right now, where it's like, you have one opinion and the other person has one, and there's like no respect or consideration. And I know that in some of these areas and at conference, General Service Conference, they can vote on something, and then the minority opinion will share, and they can completely change the vote.
That's right.
And so I think that's pretty amazing too. That's one of the things that I did like when we were talking about General Service in my little group, was that that the delegates and even our GSRs, our trusted servants and stuff, have the right to change their opinion if they learn something new that
Yep.
makes them think that it's a different thing. So it's different than, say, how we think about our political leaders now, where if they change their mind on some sort of position, we get pissed off, and it's like,
Right.
well, if they've got more information, then hopefully they would make a new decision based on new information. But I don't see that in our general political realm, but I've seen it in AA. So that's kind of a cool thing as well, as being able to see that kind of stuff happen, and that it can happen for such a large group of people, large organization that yeah. So I mean, there are some things that I would like to see changed, and stuff. Like I still don't care for Robert's rules. I've never memorized them, and so I've never led any of those meetings because I don't have the patience for that, or the attention span. Probably that's probably more accurate.
Yeah.
So I think that learning some new ways of running things might be helpful at some point. But I do think that it's individuals at their group level, and then the groups that are what change things within AA.
Right.
And so it's not a us against them type of a thing, which sometimes we hear about, or it's easy to get into sometimes because of cultural differences in AA. That AA says this, and it's like, well, no, AA says this. Well, no, I read this book and AA says this. Well, Joe C says this, and yeah. So
that always cracks me up when someone says AA says.
Right.
And who is AA anyway? It's like AA is, in my opinion, AA is my home group. And that's it. No one, and if you look at it, we can go into this a little bit, but in the general service structure, the entity with the that's the most important is the AA group. It's the final authority, and that means that nobody can tell the AA group what to do. The AA group tells everyone else what to do, basically. They're the ones that set the agenda for the General Service Board. And they're the ones that, elect their delegates to go to the General Service Conference. So your individual AA group can do whatever it wants. And, I often see people on our online forums that go to agnostic or secular AA groups, and they are upset with AA in general. They say they think that we should split away and do our own thing or whatever, but you can already do your own thing. Our group does its own thing. If people say AA is religious, well, maybe some other AA is religious, but my AA isn't. When I go to my group, we don't do any prayers or anything. AA isn't religious, But yeah, I know what they mean. I mean, yeah, if you read the big book and stuff, but who has to read the big book? You don't have to read the big book if you don't want to. Your group doesn't have to do that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that if you really understand how this works, there's really no reason to, you want to think about AA. You don't want to think of it as some top-down organization where it's like, you guys must do all of these things, because it's not that way at all. It's more of a grassroots type of an organization where all these groups are kind of like autonomous networks, that we network with each other, but we're not necessarily telling each other what to do.
Right. Yeah. And that's why, even though I don't like doing service, at committee levels and stuff, I do think it's important that people who are secular and secular groups do get involved in that, because I think that's how it's going to change into, the larger organization will change into something that's more the way that we like, that we think will serve the greater greater population of people, particularly younger people that are coming in and are secular. So if we change it, then we'll be able to help more people, and those people will feel comfortable, and maybe get sober, maybe get a chance and stuff. So really, some of the stuff we're doing now isn't actually for us. It's to make it so that these younger people can have a better shot at life. So I know there's a lot of us that well, I don't should myself anymore, but we think about if we had gotten sober sooner in life, if our life would be different, or we would have been able to accomplish more, or blah 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 blah. And so this is a way to be doing some sort of service that can really maybe make a difference to somebody, so that they have that chance that some of us who got sober a little bit later didn't have.
David M., who I think is a golden retriever. I'm sorry. No, David M. David says,
Judy owns a good boy.
David says, please, God, let me find an AA group that isn't religious and doesn't use the big book. Please, I beseech thee. Yeah. But you know what? The thing is, now that with Zoom meetings, it is a little bit easier. Go to aasecular.org and click on the events calendar, and you'll find some meetings there. Or join one of the Facebook groups, the AA Beyond Belief Facebook group, and you'll see some secular meetings there. So at least you can attend some of these Zoom meetings. Mm-hmm. And maybe, and this is service too, maybe you might want to start a group. That to me was the best experience I've ever had in Alcoholics Anonymous, was when Jim and I started We Agnostics in Kansas City. Mm-hmm. And I continue to reap benefits from that. Mm-hmm. There's nothing been more satisfying than to do that. And so if you want a really great experience, start your own secular AA group in your city when we can go out and do things like that, because it's a wonderful experience, and you'd be surprised how much of a need there is for it. So yeah, if you're dying for a meeting like that, you can start one. I know it's a lot of work, but it can be done for sure.
Totally.
So where should we go now? We talked a little bit about the upside down structure of AA, where the group is at the top and then the general service board is at the bottom. So basically the groups get these GSRs, they go to these district meetings like I used to go to, then they go to the area assemblies, and then the area assemblies tell the delegate what they want on the agenda, blah, blah, blah. And then this general service board votes on stuff, and then they come back and report it all to us. And that's where the communication piece comes in. And they talk a bit about how this general service structure provides a means for communication of what's going on, with the fellowship. So, the group starts by electing a GSR, and the GSR makes sure that whatever the group wants is vocalized at the district level and at the area level. So like if your group is having some sort of an issue and you want something, then your GSR will take your group's request to the district and the area and put it out there so that people will listen and vote on it, and you can affect some sort of a change, hopefully, that is requiring something outside of your group. Most of the change you want to make, you can be done at your group business meeting anyway, but you do want, if you want to do that. And then the district, they have these district committee members who go to the area assembly, and they're representing your entire district at the assembly, and they vote on things for the delegate to do when they go to New York. So, and then you got, of course, the delegate. I don't know, Angela, what your experience has been like with any of the delegates that you've known. Mm-hmm. And maybe I have a tendency to put them on a pedestal, but at our assembly in Western Missouri, there's a lot of past delegates. I mean, a lot that go to the assemblies every single time, and they don't have to be there, but they're there to kind of keep us straight. They have all this experience from decades, and they're able to give us information to help us make decisions. And they also help us with the process itself, which is sometimes kind of convoluted. And these guys really, and women, they really impressed me a lot. And I don't think I've met one yet that I haven't been impressed by. So they are kind of on a pedestal to me. And sooner or later, they're going to fall off that pedestal and I'm going to be really disappointed. But have you had any interaction with any of your delegates? And do you have the same thing when you went to your assemblies, or have you been to those when you went to that?
Which question do you want me to answer?
I don't know.
Yeah. So I mentioned before that my service sponsor was our delegate.
Yeah.
And so no, I didn't have her on a pedestal. I went to her to ask her to do this because I figured that the delegate would, know more about service, and I knew that this person had a lot of service experience. I had seen her at the different area assemblies when I attended them and when I was GSR for my group. So I knew that. But I really didn't have that kind of I wasn't awe-inspired or anything. I was really more of seeking out somebody, for information. And so I do appreciate, all of the people that continue to go and to help guide and stuff. We need that. I mean, that's part of, what this whole thing is about is, seeking out others to help us with things that we don't understand. At least, that's my point of view. Others would say, a higher power, but I think of it as, the other people who have had the experience that I don't have. The only area assembly that I participated in for our group, we went mainly because one of the things they were trying to decide on was that the person who is running the area website wanted to change the name to the web servant rather than webmaster. We have a lot of people in our group that are in the tech industry and then engineers and stuff. And so the people in the tech industry just thought it was stupid, and the engineers were annoyed that the area was wasting people's time with stuff like this. And so my job was to go and share with them that our group thought that it was a dumb idea, and that we thought it was a waste of time, and that this is actually a technical term. It's for a position, and so the whole web servant thing is and we also didn't like that it had didn't want to promote the S&M idea that sounds like from changing something from webmaster to web servant, and it just bugged us. And so they had voted on it and said yes first, and then I had minority opinion, and so then they said did another vote and decided to vote it down, but the person did it anyway. And so after that, our group took a little bit of break from being involved in at that level, and decided to just work on our own group because we're AA and
Right.
and so that's what we did. We still participated in some of the local district little day-long workshops and things like that, so that we were still contributing to our community and such. But we were highly disappointed with how that worked out, and nobody felt like taking them up on it,
Right.
and taking it to task or whatever. We're just like, all right, whatever, we're going to go back to our group, and we did, and and it was probably good for us. Our group is thriving, now. That was many years ago, and our group, it's really cool to me because the people that are in service positions in it right now are none of the founders of it. It's a whole different group of people than the ones that started it 12 years ago, and I
think that's cool. I
that's
like
what
to see
we
that.
wanted. So anyway, Yeah, so that's why, one of the reasons why, I'm not real big on it for me. I
Mm-hmm.
understand that it's important, and I think, people, like with your experience, you got up there and said, we need to support these people, and
Right.
yeah, and all of that, and Glenn, he's done amazing
Yeah.
things in Florida that
Yes.
is super cool and stuff. So I think if you want to make a difference in that way, that there's definitely opportunity there,
Yeah.
and you can try and fail, kind of like you did with the treasure thing, and
Exactly.
I did with being a committee member. It appears that you and I are mostly good for talking
Talking.
nonsense every Friday.
Right.
At this time. So that's our best service, I think, to the community right now.
Yeah.
And but I say give it a try. There's lots of different kinds of service, and you'll only know, if something doesn't work for you, unless you try it.
Yep.
So give it a shot. But I do know that service has saved quite a bit of people. I mean,
Mhm.
I do think that it is one of those things where people can transfer their, compulsion to service. But that's, not necessarily a bad thing when you're
Right.
getting sober, so yeah, I have noticed that. But most of the people, I think, usually come around to a more balanced view of service,
Mm-hmm.
and and share service with other people. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I have seen that. But like I said, I think that it saved quite a few people because it gave them something that they were really passionate about, that they wanted to do, and they just continued to work within the service structure, taking on different positions, and so it kept them sober for 20 plus years, having a different service position like every 2
Yeah.
years or so.
Yeah.
And I know that Josie and my friend Jackie have both mentioned that they got sober younger, and that Icky Paw was a big deal in their sobriety and doing service through that. And I think that is really helpful. I've seen quite a few young people that's been the thing that's helped them stay in the rooms long enough to get sober, is being of service in that way. So yeah.
Yeah. Something I was thinking about, I want to kind of, before I forget, when we were talking about how how people will say that they want to change AA, I think a lot of times what they're wanting is to change the overall culture within all the various groups in AA, so that if you go to an AA meeting in Cincinnati, you aren't going to, you'll know what to expect, and it's not going to be the craziness, I guess, you're going out. So they're really wanting to change the culture, and I think that the best way to do that is to put yourself out there to meet people from these other groups. I mean,
Mhm.
I have seen some changes here locally. When we first started going, like, for example, when I first started going to our district meetings, they always ended with the Lord's Prayer. And then after a year, I guess, of going there, they stopped doing
Mhm.
that. And the same thing at the area assembly. At the area assembly, we would, me and Julie and Greg, when we'd go to the assembly, when they started the Lord's Prayer, we would bust out of there, and they'd get in a big circle before we could leave the room, and we'd have to bust out. So they would see us, run away out of the circle, and then after a while, they realized, oh, these guys really don't like the Lord's Prayer, do they? And they were really nice, and they started doing the responsibility statement or responsibility pledge, whatever. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is
You
so
can kind of
funny. I'm
change the
just
culture.
yeah, I'm imagining you. I mean, you seem so, calm and quiet and subdued in person. If anybody's ever met John, he's just seems like one of the nicest people that you've ever met. And then
Oh,
I hear you being like this whole rebel, Rage Against the
I was.
Machine type of guy. And so yeah, so it just
Yeah.
makes me laugh.
Yeah, my early days at the assembly, I really thought I was a revolutionary, and I wasn't afraid to stir things up. But I learned something too. What happens at the assembly is almost like a closed meeting. You're not supposed to go
Mhm.
publicize it, because something that I did that got me in trouble. Okay, I think it had to do with the Toronto thing. I was
Mhm.
really upset. I mean, I really was, something that happened anyway. So I wrote this big essay, right,
Mhm.
and I posted on AA Agnostica about what was going on in my area assembly. And I was whatever. Anyway, so I started feeling like, was this a mistake? And so I'd call Roger up and I'd say, Roger, can you check out your website and let me know if you're getting anybody from Missouri checking it out? And he says, well, somebody from some little town in southern Missouri. I said, oh my God, southern Missouri, and he said, any more? Oh yeah, Springfield. Oh my God, Springfield. Because all the people in southern Missouri, they don't like this kind of stuff. So anyway, I got a call that night from that delegate who I always looked up to, who helped us out. And he told me that I was not supposed to post area business on a website like that, and that everybody was pissed off at me. so Roger, and I thought, oh my God, Roger is not going to take it down, because I know Roger, and he's like, man, once he's on a tangent, once he's on something, man. But he was nice. He took it down. Anyway, boy, I'm talking a lot. So Jackie had to say, she says, a bunch of us went to Canada from Maryland to the ICIPA conference to submit a bid to bring it to Baltimore. I bet that would be fun. That would be fun. And then Bree said that the podcast on the subject in itself was quite a service to us. Well, thank you, Bree. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I didn't know how this was going to go, actually, to be honest with you. But I'm
glad I didn't either when you brought the subject up.
Yeah. But there's a lot to it. I mean, and another thing too is, like, you don't really have to get too involved in all the nitty gritty stuff, like on the committee meetings. Those meetings can be kind of boring sometimes. But the people are kind of nice, and that's what I kind of liked about going to the area assembly when we were meeting in person. Is it was kind of like my connection to the rest of AA. And it was like, and Joe mentions this a lot, when you go to the area assembly and you're doing all the service stuff, you never talk about the big book. You never talk about the religious stuff. That never comes up. It's all secular stuff. It's about, are we gonna put on this conference, or are we gonna, how are we gonna do the state, whatever they do? I don't know what they do, but they talk about stuff like that. It's never about you better pray and all that kind of stuff. So, it's not so controversial.
Right.
We're coming up on just 15 minutes left. And I guess I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but there is a real convoluted way of voting called the third legacy procedure.
Yes.
And we did this, actually. Remember doing this in Toronto at the ICSA?
Yes.
And it lasted forever, didn't it? And I'm like, oh God, do you have to do it this way? Can't you just do one vote?
Yes.
But anyway, they have this really convoluted thing, and the way it goes, you have a ballot, and a candidate needs to have 2/3 of the vote to win. And if he does, great. Or he or she, if they get it, great, they're elected. But if they don't get it, you have to go to a second ballot. And if one of the candidates gets 2/3 of the votes, wonderful, that candidate's elected. But if they don't, then the candidates with less than 1/5 of the total vote are thrown out, right? So they can no longer be in the running, and you go to a third vote, okay? And then does the person have a 2/3 vote? And if they do, great, they're elected. But if they don't, oh my God, then the candidates with less than 1/3 of the total vote are thrown out of the pile, right? So now you have whoever's left, and you go to a fourth one. Do they get 2/3? If yes, no, great. If they don't, then oh boy. And I think this is what was happening in Toronto when we were doing our votes. I think we went to 4 of these, or maybe 5. Anyway, so whoever if the candidate with the smallest vote total is automatically withdrawn, and then the top candidates are the runners up, and they have to, I guess, put themselves up. And then you decide, do you want to keep voting or go to the hat? And I've seen it go to the hat before.
Yeah.
And when it goes to the hat, everybody thinks it's a God thing. So they think God decides, but it's actually just luck of the draw of the hat. But anyway.
Right. Yeah, I think that's how my service sponsor got to be delegate, was the hat.
Yeah. I've seen that happen before too, where you just draw from the hat, and everybody likes it when it's done that way. But they did that in Toronto, and I was just, oh man, I didn't like it very much.
It's very time consuming.
It is
Yes.
very time consuming. And it says in the service manual that that is unique to AA, and I believe it.
Yes. Yeah. My big memory of that is of Willow, actually, because she was the one that was running around and by the tables that I was at, collecting the votes and helping to write them all down and stuff. So she seemed very official. So I'd never met her before, but yeah, I was impressed by Willow during that process.
You know, I was actually a long time ago. But not a long time ago, but a few years before, I was actually the treasurer. And by the way, the only reason I was the treasurer for our district is because nobody else wanted to do it. That's the only reason I was. But the one time when there were like 3 people that wanted to do it, they didn't vote for me. You know, they didn't, and it kind of hurt my feelings. They didn't want them to vote for me. But I remember when they were doing that voting in Toronto, I didn't really want to be. Um, I only did it because Sam was asking me to do it, and I thought, okay, I'll serve. I'll be of service. But once I threw my name out there, being willing to stand, then all of a sudden I was nervous that people weren't gonna. That people didn't really like me and they didn't want to vote for me,
Yeah.
because it does kind of hurt your feelings a little bit. It's like, oh, you don't want me,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially when they have to vote 5 times.
Yeah. Yeah, and when they don't actually know you. I mean, I
I
got
know.
tapped into it and I didn't know anybody there. I mean, I knew you just by name through our group because our group sends you money. Not personally, we don't just send John money. Hey,
Right.
we send money to support the website. Uh,
Yeah.
and we support Roger's service as well. And that, yeah, that was pretty much. And I knew who Joe was because I had the book. Uh,
Yeah.
but that was kind of it. And I knew Glenn, but I didn't know that I knew Glenn until he came up and talked to me. So I was really surprised and and blindsided a bit, that I was asked to be in the pool for the board, and I'm like, well, they must really need me, and so yeah, it was a weird experience all around. So, and I was really, looking forward to this one, just to be able to meet all the people that I've been talking to since the Toronto conference.
Mm.
And so, yeah, so, still bummed out that that things have gone the way that they have in our country, and we're not able to do that. It's still the right thing
Yeah.
that we didn't do it, but
Right.
still, yeah, I would have liked to meet all of these people that I've made friends with in the last couple of years.
Oh, Joe says that you had an amazing speech about outreach.
Uh,
Do you
yeah,
recall that?
um, yeah, somewhat.
Yeah.
I'm very passionate about it. So and if I'm tap into that passion, then yes, I can be pretty persuasive.
You thought it was important, I guess, to, and am I just putting correct me if I'm wrong, but you felt it was important for us as secular members of AA to reach out to the rest of AA, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, I've been and I've gotten into disagreements with other members in the secular community, because I am one of the people that feels strongly that we can change AA to make it, as a whole, the way that we want it to be, to make it more open and accepting to a lot of different things. I guess more of the don't throw out the baby with the bathwater type of a thing. I don't think that AA is the best program for everybody. I'm really happy that there's a lot of different things out there now that either weren't there when I got sober, or that I just didn't have access to because of where I was located. But I'm very happy that other organizations have sprung up that are secular and helping people in recovery and all of that kind of stuff. But I find that that having a secular presence within the traditional, I'm doing the air quotes, AA community is beneficial for a lot of the people in that community, because a lot of them are tired of the regular stuff that they hear at meetings, all the time, and saying the same things over and over again. And those of us that go to those meetings on occasion, and when we share about, how we do things, how our personal AA program works, it often revitalizes those people, and they become more interested in AA again, or it just shines a light in a direction that they didn't know was there. And so I think that it actually helps people who have quite a bit of time in AA by us being involved, because, I think that it can prevent relapse by some people who just get really, really tired of the same old stuff. And so it shows them that there's another way to do this stuff, that you can stay sober and phrase things in a different way that makes more sense at this time and day and age, and these pandemic times.
Yeah.
That kind of a thing. So yeah, so it's been important to me. I like to joke about spreading the good news of secular AA.
Right.
Because I think it's important and it's helpful. I've been in meetings where people have lost a loved one or something, and some people will share, well, they're in a bitter place, or God's will, or blah blah blah, and so it's nice to to be a presence that can talk to them about staying sober without all of that kind of stuff, without making it about a higher power choosing who lives and dies and stuff like that, because those are some of the times when I think members in AA really do struggle with their sobriety. I mean, it's great for the day-to-day things like getting you a parking space, but
Right.
When you lose a loved one, it can really shake your faith. And if your faith is in the program of AA and in the superpowers of the people in AA, which is their stories and their ability to relate to you, then that's not as easily shaken. And so how's that for passionate?
Yeah. And
the last 10 minutes.
No, that's good passion. And I don't know. I hope that that somebody might stumble upon this podcast someday, and this episode, and maybe they might get interested in general servers. I mean, I understand why people wouldn't be, because because the group is so autonomous that there's really and they're so free to do whatever they want, that there really isn't a need to get involved like that so much for your group itself. But if you're really interested in learning more about just the history of this fellowship and how it works and how we're all interrelated and interconnected, and just to meet people from different walks of life, from different groups, there is a rich experience to be had. And you don't have to, it's not like you have to, you can put in as much effort as you want or as little effort as you want. And I have found the people to be very loving. I swear to God, as much as I hated the way they treated me as treasurer, I could go back to my district and they would be happy to have me there. They'd be very nice to me. And they would be. And because when I see them in the area, they're very nice to me. They're it's no big deal. So yeah, it's like, and I like that, there's a certain thing about AA that is different than like, if that happened at work, if they fired me at work or something, I don't know. Oh, we got a caller. Let's take this call. I'm excited already.
Wow.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. How you doing? This is John.
Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Oh, John.
Hi. How are you?
I can hear you just fine.
Good.
You hear me?
I hear you just fine.
Oh,
thanks
cool.
for calling. So what's on your mind?
Anytime. Why doesn't the movement have a general service conference structure that mirrors AA with the inverted triangle?
Mm-hmm. Well, when you say the movement, you're talking about just the secular members of AA. You talk
No,
about,
this thing you guys call your movement.
see, I
Secular
don't.
AA Inc.
I don't call it a movement,
Well,
but I know people do.
I've seen you call it that in print, so perhaps
I've
you're,
probably changed my mind. I think I got burned out on that a little bit. When I first got involved in all of this, I was kind of a bit of a revolutionary, and I did see it as a movement. And I thought that we needed to really go out there and push for a lot of change and have this kind of a structure and so forth. I don't really feel that way so much anymore. I think that like we do have that we have the secular AA organization, and I think that it should just be pretty much limited to putting on a conference and maybe encouraging people to get involved with general service through the General Service Conference of AA, kind of like the Young People's ICIPOD does. You know, I think that would be the better model.
Yeah, but, I mean, I've been an AA forever. I mean, the General Service Conference does nothing. It hasn't done anything since the 1950s.
Yeah.
So I mean, but as for this sub thing for our secular AA movement, I don't. You know, where I reside, there are 18 meetings, and I assume 18 groups. And I did service at what I would call my home group forever and ever, and I wasn't contacted by anybody anywhere. So and it seems you talk about the voting that went on at Toronto. That's not representative of anything. That's only representative of the people who wanted to go to the conference. So I don't see why they're voting for anybody. And that isn't a bottom up. It ultimately is a top down.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Which is
that's why I think
right?
that's why I think it should be limited just to putting on a conference, because it's only the people at the conference that vote for that, you know. So it should just be all that.
Sorry, one more.
Yeah, so I think that's why I think that organization should be limited to putting on a conference, because all that happens at that vote are people at the conference itself that vote for it. So I don't think that organization should really be responsible for anything other than putting on a conference. That's it, in my opinion. There are those that disagree with me. There's a lot of people that agree. There's a lot of people that agree with you. There's a lot of people out there that think that we do need an organization like that. And in fact, I saw somebody post on AA Beyond Belief not too long ago saying that and I say we, that say that those that go to secular AA meetings should do that. And I think that they can do it. We can do it if they want to somehow organize and do that.
Yeah, but how? I mean, you have this board that just seems like it's just which operates entirely in secret. I mean, I tried to log on to seculara.org and it's gone.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, that's a whole other story. About that.
And I just saw on Roger's site a couple weeks ago. I looked on the right and there said, wait a minute. I mean, shouldn't somebody that high up in the movement do some kind of communication for us knuckleheads out in the field?
Well,
that's what I don't see. I say, okay, what happened to secular AA? Now there's this thing called AA Secular.
Yeah.
And I go in there, and I get a link. I get basically a bare bones website.
Well, I'll just say
it's got. Well, excuse me. They've got a PDF, and they've got 7 pages of the most recent board meeting,
right?
A lot of which just and I guess there was some kind of significant falling out with Courtney.
Okay, I can answer if you want me to answer your question.
And he was. I would love an answer to my question because it's sure, please.
Okay, so I'm the one that put that website up real quick. And yes, there was a bit of a falling out, I suppose. We were wanting to make a change with the how we handle the IT there. Courtney disagreed, but that has been resolved. We're going to get our website back. We're looking for somebody who will do that for us, and that's where we are right now. It's kind of like a flux kind of a situation. But I don't know. Nothing's perfect. I don't think that they try to operate in secret or anything like that. And we're just people trying to do our best. But
I disagree with you completely.
Okay. Well,
that they don't try to operate in secret, because I've observed it. They do.
We're gonna go now.
Don't urinate on my leg and tell me that it's raining, please. But anyway, so.
Oh, well, that was probably the troll guy that comes in. I was kind of having a little bit of fun with him, I guess, but I probably should have let him go a long time ago. But I don't know, maybe he's earnest, but I just don't see things that way. I just don't see that there's some sort of a top-down structure where, there are people who are high up in the organization and there are people who aren't. There's no such thing. We're just a collection of individual AA groups. That's all we are. That's it, period. Yeah. And this organization, all they do is put on a conference every couple of years. That is it.
I think
nobody is telling anybody to do anything.
It's, and it's only existed for a couple of years. I mean, the bylaws were put together or voted on in Toronto. And so it's still, that people were trying to figure it out and, figure out how to change it and what makes sense and what doesn't. It was such a new organization and, trying to figure out what, we should be and shouldn't be. And I agree. I think that the best place for, secular consensus type thing is to have it be like an ICIPA group where, all they do is they have a steering committee that puts on the conference. Yeah. And, and that's what would be important to me is having a conference of like-minded secular people where we have, people come and speak who share, similar experiences to us or inspiring some, experiences to us. And so, that is something that I think is what I would like to see. And as far as the having a vote type of a thing, I agree that I don't think that, only people who go to the conference, should, have a vote in things, which is, again, why I think having it just be a steering committee that creates the conference. Yeah. And then, as we said in talking about general service, having our groups, our secular groups, have a GSR that goes to the district so that we are participating in AA. Yeah. At that level, we're voting for things in AA because personally, I'm an AA member first, and I'm a part of a secular group second, and then the rest of it is whatever, But I'm a member of AA, and I'm secular, and that's how I think would work best. At this point in time, that could change as I get more information, and I'm always open to that. Yeah. But for me, I think that's been one of the troubling things within the non-movement, or just within the group of people who are in AA and in our secular communities, which I think is probably a better term for it. Is that over, whether or not or how we get involved or, that kind of a thing. And there's been a lot of talk about a lot of different ways we could have done it and stuff. You've mentioned, Gala, they do something that's a little bit different. And, and so it's not like people aren't thinking about it. There's been discussions and there'll, probably continue to be discussions. Yeah. And you know what? And as far as the secrecy stuff, there is something to be said for if you, elect people to look into things or try to set up structures for you, for them to be able to talk freely amongst themselves and share ideas about, what might work, what might not work. And I know that within our thing, that failed a little bit in that, things got brought up or, the bylaws, were misunderstood or whatever, and it made it a little bit crazy for a while. But anyway.
Well, I can't believe it, Angela. We've actually gone 6 minutes, almost 7 minutes over the hour. I didn't know that we were going to be able to. The caller actually was stimulated things a little bit. And you know what? Whatever people want. I at one time I was right there with him. You know what? I totally was, but I'm just not there anymore. All I want to do is this podcast and have some fun. So anyway, oops.
That's a perfect.
Okay, I'm looking for the right.
All I want is to have some fun. Yay! Woohoo!
That's it. That's all I want to do. So that's it. That's another episode of AA Beyond Belief, the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that this was enjoyable. I hope that somebody got something out of it, or somebody who might be listening in the future gets something out of it. If you didn't, I did anyway. So that's it, folks. We'll be back again next week for another live stream, and y'all take care. We'll be back soon.